All right, want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. Give me 1 second to get my space readjusted. All right. Wow, Miss Kinzer's not here. I'm not sure who to turn to call the roll. Is it Mr. Howell? Ms. Parker. Here. Ms. Kinzer, she's absent. Mr. Harlan. Here. Mr. Fulbright. Here. Mr. Moore. Present. Ms. Earlis. Here. Mr. Stan. Here. Mr. Hooper. Here. Mr. Howell's present. Mr. Lindsay. Here. And Mr. Dudley is absent. Okay, thank you very much. We have 9 folks with us, so we have a quorum. This time I will turn the meeting over. We have some guests from Whitthorne Middle School with us who will lead us in the pledge, and I believe the artwork that I cannot see is gifts from Whitthorne Middle School as well. So if you would, please rise for the pledge, followed by a moment of silence. Okay, yeah, just jump in.
Chair Fulbright and the board, before we go into a moment of silence, I would like to recognize, as we go into this, if you'll keep Lee Claiborne's family in your thoughts and prayers. Lee Claiborne, if you don't know who he is, he's a pillar of our community. He is one of the strongest advocates and friends of Murray County Public Schools. He is well known for his coaching ranks, his teaching ranks, and has just always been a friend to the schools and to the school board and helped wherever possible. So if you could just keep his family and friends in your prayers.
Okay, thank you. You can be seated. We have before us our agenda for the evening. It's always nice to see when it fits on the front and the back. Mr. Moore, your light is on.
Yeah, could I ask that we add something to new business, please? A discussion of the state COVID reopening plan.
Yes, we will put that 7.5.
Thank you.
Are there any other requests of the agenda? Ms. Parker.
Can I ask that we take off item 3.3, the ESSER 3.0 HVAC? I don't think that was on the work session agenda, and I know that we just got our ESSER funds, but I would just hope that we could discuss how we want to spend $6 million at the work session in a little bit more detail before we obligate ourselves on that. That wasn't on our work session.
Okay, what is the will of the... Okay, we will tentatively remove that, and then pending the approval of our agenda, that will be kicked to the work session if we don't tackle it tonight. Any other proposed changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Oh, we have a motion by Mr. Moore and a second from Mr. Hooper. Thank you, whoever caught that. All right.
The agenda passes as, I don't know, not altered or amended, but whatever we have now. Item 3 has been removed under new business, and item 5 has been added under new business. Are there any public recognitions or announcements? Okay. Public delegations. Has anybody signed up in the back? I know I have one person that's going to... You don't... Sit down. You don't need to sign up. I'm not going to let you talk anyway. Staff reporting. Anything the staff would like to share with us this evening? Okay. Consent items. We have 23 items under consent. Are there any that need to be pulled off? Have a motion to approve all 23 items under consent. Second for Mr. Howell. Motion by Mr. Moore. Second by Mr. Howell. I think we're ready to vote, seeing no other discussion on the topics.
Mr. I got technical issues, so.
All right, that passes unanimously. Consent items are good to go. Moving on to new business. Finance, Mr. Laconin, thank you for being here with us this evening.
Yes, sir. We have new budget amendments since ESSER was approved between the work session and this voting board meeting. It was mentioned that if we did get it approved to bring these forward to you at this meeting, and here they are, to amend based on the plan that the school board approved for ESSER 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0.
Okay. Just want to get something pulled up so I can take a look at. Is there any discussion on any of these three? I have a motion for Mr. Sims to approve all three. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Irvin. Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I just do have a question on these. I know a couple of times as these have come back and forth, would we need to, if we decided at some point to change any of the ESSER spending, do we have to modify these, the budget amendments, or is it just on the back end? Can we just change how we kind of are moving things around?
We would do a budget amendment per your recommendation if you wanted to change funding from something that was already approved in the plan, and usually that comes recommended based on needs, as needs change.
And if we changed anything from the plan, we'd also have to go back and resubmit as well to the grant.
My only question is, since we took the HVAC spending off of this, do we have to adjust this in any way? Can we still vote on this as is?
We're just not voting to spend it just yet, but the budget amendment is based off of the plan, and the plan's already been approved, so this is allocating those funds for purchases that we are going to make, and that purchase was removed from the agenda, so basically it's on pause.
Okay, but everything, I mean, we don't need to adjust anything on this in order to be able to vote on it tonight.
No, because we don't have school board approval to move forward on the purchase.
Okay.
So it
All
won't
right.
be spent.
Any other discussion? Seeing none,
And just to add,
Mr. Gaines.
any item that meets that board threshold will come back to you again. If we're going to purchase something that's over, except for textbooks, which you've already approved, but you'll get a FYI on that. But any other item that comes forward that's over the threshold will come back to you for approval.
Thank you. All right, I believe I see no other lights. Let's go ahead and vote. Okay, that does pass unanimously. I have a question real quick. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's continue on to instruction. Signing bonus, differentiated pay for educational teachers. Special education teachers. I don't know if I said that right.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. You will recall from the board work session, there is a PowerPoint that is basically asking for your consideration in signing bonuses for special education certified teachers. However, after much discussion at the board meeting, or at the board work session, I did take a lot of what you said to heart and went back and met with not only my leadership team, but, talked to a lot of other special education teachers. I talked to some general education teachers. I talked to some principals, and I talked to some assistant principals. And they kind of concurred with a few board members that really said, everybody is carrying a heavier load. We have people who are doing 1.5 their typical job. We have people that are doing 2 times their job. We have people who are unfortunately doing 3 and 4 times their job. So what you will see is an attachment that I think I just called certified by the numbers or special ed by the numbers. It might be the special ed teacher in me, but I've given you kind of a choice board here as far as where we want to take this, or if you want to take this any further. All the figures that you see here, I just want to have clarification just ahead of the game. All of these are already budgeted in my budget right now. This will require not 1 penny from fund balance. This is, what you see is, unfortunately, without staff, I've got some money in salary lines. So please go into this conversation knowing that none of this will come out of fund balance in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Also, please remember that under federal law, I have what is called a maintenance of effort requirement, which means if I don't spend the money on people, I've got to spend that money on stuff. There's no way around unless our population decreases. The only exceptions to maintenance of effort are population decrease or a high-cost student moves away. Staffing is not an allowable maintenance of effort exception. So this money will be spent, and hopefully we can spend it on people and not stuff. But, so in the first line, as you go across the spreadsheet from left to right, you will see the first column is what is actually budgeted. That's the number of personnel budgeted. And then looking at numbers, again, without wanting you to go into fund balance or staying within my budget, I am very comfortable with a $5,000 differentiated pay plan. That would be for all certified staff. With fixed costs, that comes to a little under $5,700. So I went high, budgeted $5,700. On the low end, a $3,000 differentiated pay package, again with fixed costs, that would be $3,400. So as you look through those columns, that would be the maximum cost because that is what is budgeted. Then I went into who do we currently have employed. Let's just say this doesn't work. We don't hire anybody. Everybody's doing 2 and 3 times the work. Those would be your costs. If you chose a $5,700, $5,000 to employees, of course $7,000 fixed costs, $3,000, $3,400 with the fixed costs. If you look at the very bottom line totals, you're talking less than $1 million. I know that sounds like a lot of money to some people, but in a $100 million budget, of which I take up about 16%, I'm typically around $16 million of that. So that is what I have before you. I am willing to, I can crunch numbers. I don't think anything less than $3,000 is going to accomplish what we want to accomplish. I don't think that's incentivizing enough for new employees to come in. And like I said, I'm not particularly comfortable with anything over $5,000 because hopefully this will incentivize and I can afford that within my current budget. I don't come at this easily. I understand that differentiated pay is something that we all kind of about. You know, it causes consternation. My problem is simply this. I have no one to take care of the children. I am talking to principals and assistant principals and teachers and parents every single day. And I'm usually, I don't always know the answers, but I'm usually a pretty good answer person. And unfortunately, right now I'm saying, well, you can post a position, but we are literally slicing and dicing. I closed down on, yesterday I met with Whitthorne staff, closed down a specialized program there. We are sending those children to different schools. I am probably going to meet with Central by the end of this week and close down a program there because I simply do not have the staff to take care of. Those children have been without a certified teacher since the beginning of the school year. So I find myself on frightening ground and am just looking at any outside-of-the-box idea that I can draw some people in here. I have broken it down by teachers, SLPs, psychologists, facilitators, coordinators, supervisor. You know, we can talk about each one of those categories. You can tell that I'm short in every one of those categories. I will say that I did not post the open position for the facilitator because I'm kind of darned if I do and darned if I don't. If I post it, I would probably be looking for someone outside of county, and I can't say that when I post a position. But if I were to take somebody else from inside of county, again, I'm just digging a hole, or I'm filling a hole to dig another hole. So we're all just doing more. The SLPs do more when there's no teachers. A lot of times a speech-language pathologist will be working on who, what, where, why questions, the WH questions, and unfortunately there's not a resource teacher to accomplish that. So the SLP's caseloads are bigger. You all know we've had a school psychologist shortage for years, so everybody is literally doing more. My facilitators, we have been meeting on Saturdays. We have been meeting in the evenings because they're covering classes around the district. They are, you know, where there's a hole, they're trying to fill it, and they've spent many weeks in different classrooms and subbing. So same thing with my coordinators and myself. We have been everywhere, you know, just trying to fill those holes.
Okay, thank you. I do have one person that signed up under the topic of special education. Jillian Moore, how are you? Come on up first. That's fine. Now, we do have a policy. Are you from Murray County? Okay. Okay. Then go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes to address the topic.
Okay.
And
thank you.
there'll be no rebuttal, just so you feel comfortable saying what you need to say.
Yeah,
So
thank
go ahead.
you so much for letting me talk. My name is Jillian Moore. I have a 4th grade student enrolled in the Maury County Public Schools. He has a disease called Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is a fatal muscle wasting disease. And because of his medications, to keep his heart and lungs functioning properly, he is very immunocompromised. So this has led to a bound program. Regardless of anyone's viewpoint of COVID or masking or the vaccine, the reality for my child is COVID would kill him. We had no choice but to take him out of that environment that could be deadly for him. Obviously that was our choice, but it was what was best for his health. And I feel like at this point we were forced between education and health, and that's just never a good thing. But the reason I stand before you now is because the homebound program is inadequate. He is receiving none of the services that he's supposed to get when he's at school. He sees a special education teacher twice a week, no physical therapy, none of the things that he's supposed to be having when he's at school with his teachers. It's been addressed by Lisa Ventura herself. I'm sure you guys saw the article written in News 17 about out of the 2,700 kids you guys have here for services, 400 of them are not receiving their services, which is against federal guidelines, and we all know that. And what she just said about spending money on stuff and not people, that's just sad. We shouldn't be spending money on stuff and not our children. That is just, it's not right. Recently I was told Aiden was behind in school. Well, he's behind because it took 3.5 weeks to get a special education teacher to my son to start his work. We had no idea how to get his work, how to return his work, who was grading his work. His teacher was on maternity leave. We had all these different substitute teachers. And I do blame this on Maury County Public Schools and the lack of budgeting and the lack of of having enough people to take care of these kids. I mean, they're kids. They deserve that. They deserve to be taken care of just like every other child. A couple other things I just kind of wanted to go over quickly, I know I'm running out of time, is that we enrolled in Maury County last year. We came from New Hampshire, completely different school system, I understand that, but he has compression fractures in his back. We were told he was going to get a special chair to stabilize him in class. He was sitting in an Adirondack chair, a mini Adirondack chair. This child has 3 fractures in his back. Explain to me how that happened and why it happened. The gym teacher had him lifting weights. He was specifically told, you cannot lift weights. It'll destroy his muscles. He can't repair his muscles. So you have not only lack of budget, but now you have lack of educated people with my child who's dying. It's not fair. It's not fair. I've had several conversations with people. It's not the school. We love the school he attends. This teacher that comes out to his house is amazing. To our house is amazing. But he's just not getting what he needs here. And it's very discouraging because when I came here, I had already been in contact with the school system, gave him his IEP, told him about Aiden, gave him all kinds of packets and information about what Duchenne is, what you can and cannot do. And nobody listened to me. So my son comes home and saying his arms hurt because his gym teacher didn't stop to read or educate himself about what Duchenne is. That is so discouraging when your son comes home and saying, Mom, I can't pick up my arms. So I just want to know what we're going to do about this issue. This is a serious issue. I know it's not just my son, and it's not about COVID, and it's not about vaccinations, and it's not about masking. It's about doing the right thing for our kids, and this is not the right thing. And that's really all I have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It sounds like, Ms. Ventura, you've been notified about these issues and address everything, or trying to address everything?
Yes, I have.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
What, I guess, do we need to vote on the proposal as presented? Give me some comments. Board discussion time. Ms. Parker.
I'll make the motion to approve the signing bonus differentiated pay at the $5,000 level.
Okay. Second for Mr. Sims. Mr. Lindsay.
Just question for Ms. Ventura. So what happens when how do we handle this when we're able to fully staff again?
So this is a 1-year, one-time desperation mode move. However, I do feel like this may be something that we have to take up again during budget season. When I presented the just for as a signing bonus, I think I was pretty clear that we would definitely be looking at this again at budget season. I can tell you where I am. We can kind of feel the temperature out there as far as I do think, as we have talked about, that the field of special education is no longer being chosen. So this may be something that we have to look at long term. The proposal that I have before you is for this fiscal year only. We will assess and reevaluate, and then at budget season, hopefully we can come up with a plan for next fiscal year. In all honesty, I don't see it going away. I don't want to paint any rose-colored glasses that I think, oh, I'm going to go on the radio station with Jack Cobb on Thursday and announce that we've done this and life is going to be grand and people are going to be beating down the doors. I don't want to give you that illusion. However, I think it's a step in the right direction, and it's something that not only with the salary study and with all of the things that we talk about at budget season, that's the appropriate time for us to assess, evaluate, and decide how we move forward.
You mentioned salary study, and that was another question I had. I would assume that if we go with this tonight and we increase salaries and do a signing bonus, that would be taken into consideration within the salary study, and that this wouldn't, for instance, if the salary study comes back and says that we're $3,000 short for our special ed teachers, we need to pay them $3,000 more, we wouldn't add $5,000 onto that moving forward. That would
Absolutely. And that would crush our budget if we were fully staffed.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that she hasn't said, and just to make a point of emphasis, the state has been very kind in a lot of our waivers for licensures, but one of the ones they will not let us do a waiver for is special education. And so, you know, we have talked about growing your own, and we're really going to be focusing a lot into her department as well to try to grow our own to help staff that. But that is an area where we just can't have somebody with a degree and say, hey, we'll go do the waiver and try to get there. That's the only one you will not hear them ever endorse.
Thank you. And just to some facts I heard today, just to illustrate how competitive the hiring market is. Burger King is hiring $13.50 with a $3,000 signing bonus. And if anybody wants to go to Five Guys in Spring Hill, they're hiring at $21.50 starting out. So, yeah, it's not. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Thank you for announcing that.
I'm almost. I'm fighting my own urge to go down there and apply to flip burgers and pass out peanuts. But I think that's illustrative of the challenge we have. And there was an article that popped up on my thing from Yahoo Sports this morning talking about how teachers in Florida are in such short supply. So it's not a Tennessee thing. It's not a Murray County thing. It's a nationwide thing. So I do think that even though, you know, I'm not a big fan of changing budgets in the middle of the year, we can't continue doing what we're doing. Mr. Moore.
Yeah. Hey, Lisa, could you? I know we had a slightly different version of this that came to the work session, especially I know not the signing bonus, but the differentiated pay. Can you kind of briefly go over what that one had looked like? The short version of that.
When we talked at the board work session, I was simply offering all of my presentation was signing bonus.
Okay.
However, we talked about, you know, kind of like what would be the rules of divide up the funding.
Yeah.
Give me some more specifics. I'm sorry.
I guess I'll get to my point. When we talked about it at the work session, I thought your plan for the signing bonus, I really liked the way it was going. I think it had some good feedback for us to kind of see, and actually would play in well with the salary study where we could actually get some feedback, see how these things played out, and then make adjustments. The way this differentiated plan, I guess for me, I struggle with that it's not really addressing the bringing people in, which is what I thought we were really working towards here on this. And I understand differentiated pay, and I guess I'm going to flip-flop from my view from the work session because I know there were several board members at that time that brought up that they thought we were getting into kind of the edge of this whole salary study of looking at all of the pay for everybody. And I really do feel like when I see this here that we're really getting into that probably a little deeper than I'm comfortable with right now, because if I'm trying to envision myself as another employee in the district, and I see this go through, and I think it kind of can start a waterfall effect of we ought to be talking about this for everybody, and I'm not sure if we're ready to do that right now. That's just where I'm at personally. So that's one of the parts I struggle with. Again, I like the signing bonus. I think the way you structured that was a good approach to try something we haven't done here. But the rest of this, I just don't think I can support right now.
And this would be a signing bonus as well as those first two columns. You know, if you sign on today, you're going to get a $5,000
sure.
bonus.
And again, that's the piece that I do agree with. I think the other creeps over into the whole what we as a board are going to have to look at. I think we kind of get a little further than I'm comfortable getting into in that part of it. And I don't think we can do it justice right now and then be able to quickly jump into the rest of the departments too. So
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Howell.
So I really want to incentivize, absolutely, but I'm afraid if we just do a sign-on bonus, you're going to de-incentivize long-time, loyal employees who know our student population. And I would hate to lose somebody because we're trying to attract somebody else who has no idea about what our student population is. They haven't dealt with little Johnny and don't know him. And so now we've got this new person. We've come in for this school, but now we lose little Johnny's sped EA. And I like that we're trying something different, I do, but I don't want to just focus on signing bonuses because you're kind of stubbing your nose at everyone who has been here for 5 or 10 years, and you're just saying, well, thank you for your service, but we're not really going to take care of that. And so I really want to make sure that everyone's taken care of. And I know we can promise, we're going to do we're doing a salary study. We've done at least 1 or 2 more since I've been here, and we do what we can to act on that. But promises and hopes and dreams don't pay the bills right now. And if they can go to 5 guys for $21 an hour, that's a guaranteed, not a hopes and dreams and promises. So I will support this, but I really want to make sure that we're not going to de-incentivize people.
And I will say that some of the conversations that I had with my staff, when we started crunching the numbers and realized how affordable this was, it's one thing to say this is affordable, it's another thing to say this is what we really want to do. And one of the conversations that we had, if you look at like Mount Pleasant High School, for some reason Mount Pleasant High School is 100% special ed staffed. They have every EA that they need, they have every special ed teacher that they need. So we were like, okay, well, should we focus on like a Central that is missing 3 special education teachers? Is that something we should, if we focus on that, those people from Mount Pleasant High School may jump so it was kind of like, should this be, and Mr. Moore, to your point, we really came down to we either need to do a signing bonus or we need to do something for everybody. And doing something for everybody is not only affordable, but it kind of closes some of those loopholes that we talked about with the signing bonuses.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lindsay.
I agree with you totally. I beat that drum during the work session that we got to take care of the people that work for us now. If not, we know surrounding counties are offering signing bonuses. So if I'm a 10-year employee in Murray County Schools and you don't go to the next county and get that signing bonus, at least if we offer something that we show some sort of appreciation. And just to be honest, I don't, special education, you've never been overrun with applicants. If we sit back and look at that we've always needed to entice people for those positions, and there's other positions as well, but which is why I think we should take a long, hard look at our differentiated pay countywide. But I appreciate you guys going back and looking at it, and I know I beat you up a couple of weeks ago, but I do like this a lot better than the first one.
Thank you very much. Ms. Parker.
I just want to say I feel like this is kind of like the best of both worlds in that we're trying to take care of those that we have as well as trying to recruit to hopefully fill some of these positions so there aren't vacancies like we heard about. I think the reason why I'm not necessarily worried about this with regards to our salary schedule is because we can't do this for everybody because we don't have a budget that allows us to do this for everybody. Ms. Ventura has a budget that makes this possible. If others have a budget that make it possible, I'm certainly willing for those departments to bring that forward for people that are doing extra work. But and I will also say I like the fact that it's covering everybody because like you said, your coordinators, your supervisors, you're salaried and you can come in and work on Saturday and get your stuff done, but making sure that the students have what they need Monday through Friday, I think should be our top priority, and if that's what's being done in your department, I have to commend you for that.
Thank you. Seeing no other lights, I believe we're ready to vote on the motion to approve this plan. This plan has been approved. Moving on to special education assistant pay.
So that was the certified side of the house, the classified side of the house. As I stated again at the board work session, every year I lose just under 40% of my special education assistants. Again, and I don't mean this disrespectful, it's a wonderful thing, but with the increase in sub pay, it's much more lucrative for somebody to have less I don't want to say less responsibility because subs have a huge responsibility, but less tie into a school and make more. So I think that the urgency of this proposal is also huge. Every day I am losing to the Burger Kings and the Five Guys, and apparently Lowe's is quite a place to work as well. So propose, and again, I've given you kind of choices that are affordable and sustainable. When we talked at the board work session, I was requesting a $1 an hour raise for every single special education assistant throughout the district. Your total annual cost for that is $142,000 if I were fully staffed. The comment was made, well, could we afford more? We could afford more. Proposal 2 is $1.50 an hour more. That would be a total annual cost of $214,000. And I say that just so you all know, in full disclosure, Mr. Hickman and Mr. Wolver and Mr. Ard and I have had several conversations about this. This is one of those tricky things that your school board policy really doesn't require us to come to you with a classified. However, because this is something that will impact budget, you know, in a sustainable way, you know, down the road, we just felt like we were kind of obligated to bring it to you to vote. There have been classified salaries that have moved or been increased without your approval, and we did not want to go down that road. Obviously, this year it would not cost you either of those because we are 2/3 through the year, and I'm not at full staff. I will tell you, with the amount of federal money coming in, everybody else has ESSER. I have ARP, which really makes me feel old that they would call it ARP, just as an aside, but I'm the ARP girl. With that money, I can absolutely guarantee you that at this rate, this is sustainable for multiple years. I would say this is absolutely sustainable for 5 years. The thing I can't guarantee with sustainability is our growth. If we really do have 8,400 houses being built, 95 EAs, it's not going to carry me as far as I need to go. So that's where you'll actually see that impact. But I can absolutely, first of all, I can absolutely carry this in my general purpose budget, in my 141 budget, in our local budget without going into fund balance. And I can absolutely sustain it federally. We can, when we get to budget season, we can move, I can't move all the EAs, because of course I can't supplant, but I can move some of them to keep your bottom line the same and move some of those employees into IDEA funds, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Mr. Lindsay.
Can you quickly tell us the hourly pay range for special ed assistants, minimum, maximum?
The average is $10 an hour. The minimum, I believe, is $7.80 an hour. And the maximum, I believe, is $14.45 an hour. It might be $15.45 an hour.
Okay. Thank you.
You make my point that that Mr. Fulbright talked about Five Guys. So I mean,
I really shouldn't have brought that up.
No, you shouldn't have. But that's my point, and I've said this a ton of times here. It's criminal what we pay these people. So if you're ready for a motion, I'll make a motion for the $1.50 an hour.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Lindsay, second from Ms. Irvin. All right, Mr. Moore, your light's on.
I was a little late on that. I was hoping to ask Ms. Ventura which one you recommended to move forward with.
Listen, these people, they are what keeps my bus going. I mean, they are incredible.
Then you're satisfied with the number 2 option?
I am very satisfied with the number 2.
Okay. We got one. Ms. Irvin seconded it. Yes. All right. Just for clarification, that was option 2 that Mr. Lindsay made the motion for, and Ms. Irvin made the second. I don't see any other lights. I think we're ready to vote.
Can I have one more thing?
Wait, we're not ready to vote yet. Mr. Moore.
Sorry, I apologize for that. Similar to what we had talked about kind of some follow-up on this. I mean, I think this is an area, these are some changes we're making on the fly. When would you be able to kind of give us some feedback on this? End of school year? I mean, I'm not saying right now, but like what end of school year, kind of how this
you want to do a
plays
temperature check? I mean, I can do a temperature check around February. You want like the February work session going into the board meeting for March?
I think that might be helpful as we move ahead with both the salary study discussions as well as budget season.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. Sounds good. All right. Now I believe we're ready to vote. Plan 2 passes unanimously. Mr. Gaines, we're up to you with the Discovery Ed textbook agreement.
I think we will defer to, we asked you to, we talked to you about the, shortfall in services, with Discovery at the work session. Subsequently, our ESSER 3 application was approved. We then had funding available. We asked to, get permission to do an intent to purchase. I think with finance and Doug can add, we still had some thought we needed to bring it before the board, and I think Patty thought it might be to get it done that we could bring it to executive committee, but I think after that, I think Jake determined that we needed to bring this purchase to you and have it approved rather than do it with executive.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion for Mr. Moore to approve, second for Mr. Howe. Mr. Lacona.
To add clarification, after the intent to purchase was signed, the purchasing department did not open a PO because this is a purchase above $25,000 and requires board approval.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to take this time, and I meant to say it earlier. Ms. Ventura, you mentioned that you guys did not want to raise that salary without consulting the board. We appreciate that. A lot of times that didn't happen in the past, so thank you. Ms. Parker.
I just wanted to follow up on this Discovery Ed item because I know there was some discussion at the work session about it, and I guess the part that still I'm not real clear about is why we had an interruption in service. I mean, I know I had conversations with Director Hickman back in August about this particular textbook. I know that we're waiting on ESSER funds, but it seems like with Discovery Ed, it was a button that needed to be pushed to get it back to us. And this idea of an intent to purchase, if that was good enough, why didn't we do that before October 15th so that we could keep service? I guess is the question that I've got for staff.
So if it may take a little long. When we started the budget year, the board had approved $970,000 in the textbook line. As you know, we had agreed last year that we would pay the ELA adoption in 2 payments. The second payment was approximately $858 or something like that. So going into the budget, we didn't have sufficient funds to do Discovery at the quote it was. We asked the vendor at the beginning of the school year, would they consider with an intent to purchase, going ahead and turning on those licenses that we had. So they agreed to do that. They agreed to carry that on till October 15th. We thought as a matter of fact, we missed it by 3 days. ESSER was approved, I think, October 18th, the day after the work session. ESSER was approved. So we did miss it by a few days. The vendor was gracious to do that without. We didn't have the funds approved yet, but they agreed to turn on those licenses. And if you remember, the year before that, we didn't have a science textbook because we were going through the continuous learning plan, and we were really focusing on reading language arts. So the fact to go into purchasing science, and we did have other textbooks approved when we in the past, but there wasn't although the science textbook was an adopted curriculum, it was not in every school last year. But if you remember when we were going through the continuous learning plan, the focus was on reading language arts and math. This year when we got those ESSER funds, we came to you and proposed that, we wanted to try to catch up all of our textbooks, and we proposed to fund all of our textbooks in ESSER so that we could catch up, and that's what we came to you and talked about when we did the ESSER proposal. And the Discovery textbook was in that proposal.
I recognize those things, Mr. Gaines, but I will say one of the concerns that I have about Discovery Ed as a textbook is the issue that we have with broadband throughout our county. We heard about it today at our luncheon. we have students that don't have access to this textbook if they're at home, if they don't have internet. When we've talked about textbooks, we've not said that we don't want to have things available digitally, but I think we've also stressed that it's very important because of those issues throughout our county to have something that's physically present for children as well if they want it. The other issue I'll say that I have about this, and I will vote to approve this because I do think our kids need something, but I'm very disappointed with the planning that was done for this from the instruction department. And the reason why I say that is because I know of schools that have purchased other things to supplement it, to supplement their science curriculum because they didn't have access or did not know about Discovery Ed when they were planning this summer for their students to be back. So we've got expenditures that are going out and that teachers have been using and have not been using Discovery Ed from August 1st on. Hopefully they'll do that now, but I think we've already spent money on some other things at different schools. And again, I hope in the future that we'll just try to make sure that all of our kids have access to textbooks. And when we say textbooks, that does not just include online, digital copies.
Okay, thank you very much.
And if I could, I do think in the past, we tried to go back and look at the history. I think there were a number of instances in the past few years where Discovery there was a big purchase. It was voted because we didn't have the budget. That was cut off. You know, we had the $2.8 million agreement with Discovery over 6 years. That was stopped. During that time, we did adopt the science textbook. That's what the committee adopted. I think there were efforts to try to propose that, and those efforts weren't funded. So there were some instances where those science textbooks, we were funded for ELA and math, and those things we tried to do, but there were other purchases where I think we saw, as we went back and looked at purchases, it was funded and approved for 4 schools, and it was paid for through 2023. So those 4 schools have access, but at other schools it was not. So we did try to, in ESSER, make an effort to try to propose that we would even up and make sure that we try to purchase all textbooks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Howell.
So, well, first of all, I understand that there's downloadable content. So, I mean, I can download chapters or work. So, I mean, it's not online per se. It is a digital platform, I guess I should say. So, students can download this information, but that's not what I really am concerned about. What I'm concerned about is what if this hadn't got approved? Why my main concern is this is this is what we have approved as the textbooks, and now teachers get to school on Monday and they can't log in. They've got to scramble because they've got plenty of time on their plate to scramble around and redo their whole entire lesson plan for a day, 2 days, 3 days. It turned out to be 3 days. Could have been a week. It could have been indefinite. We don't really know. So my concern is that it just seems like it was brought to us by chance at a work session that this was a problem. I mean, I really want to know, did this just pop out of nowhere? Did we not realize that this license was going to expire? We are not broke. We actually have money that we could have purchased maybe a month-to-month or a 6 month, or I'd never, ever, ever want to hear of teachers showing up with their lesson plan and then the resources we provided is gone. I mean, it's like somebody coming into the schools at night and stealing textbooks. That's what happened in essence. And I do not want, we ask our teachers to do enough. I don't want them to have to worry about scrambling. That's the one little straw that breaks the camel's back, and they're gone. We can't afford to have anybody gone. So I mean, why did we not have this on our plate at the previous meeting? Why did we not have an emergency set? That would classify to me as an emergency. We need to have this funded ASAP, somehow, some way. My question is it was only 3 days, but what if it wasn't? What would we have done?
Okay.
I really would like an answer.
Okay.
Well, as you know, the state also the curriculum we adopted. As you know, the state passed a law that, that we couldn't go outside our adopted curriculum, that it had to be state approved. So we were really trying, I guess you would say, yes, we should have came to you, but that would have, we would have came to you and asked you to purchase another curriculum, and we really didn't want to change curriculums. It really goes back to our implementation plan, just like we're doing in reading and math.
I'm not asking
using
about
the
another,
adopted
I'm
curriculum.
not asking about another curriculum.
Yes.
I'm asking about Discovery Ed.
Yes. And
I'm not asking about,
yes.
that is
And
our
that
approved curriculum.
That is our approved
Why
curriculum.
could we have not wrote them a check
Well,
and paid for something? I mean, we're working on an intent to pay right now. We haven't paid them a dime, but we have that license.
Yeah, and we were trying to work through that to try to, to keep that license forward and try to do that.
Okay.
So another side to that is when the intent to purchase was sent over, it says that it's an order form, that it's binding, and you can't place an order, and you can't get a purchase order for something greater than $25,000 without coming to the school board. So that is why initially that night Scott had asked, "Hey, would you and Patty sign this?" And he says it's just an intent to purchase form. But when I read it, it says this order is an order. This is an order. Finding this stuff out, we decided not to open the PO. They did executive approval to sign the intent form, but we still didn't do the PO from our side, not without approval from here. So just from the finance standpoint,
It should have never got to that point, is my point. We knew what the expiration date on our license was, I presume. We were hoping that not to have to wait. We were waiting on ESSER to come in. But my question is why did we not contact the vendor a month or 2 months out? Because we know how our process goes. We don't snap our fingers and tomorrow we're cutting a check for somebody. There are processes, and we know this. So with money in the bank, physical hard money in our account, we could have wrote a check for that. We could have done the order form and the intent, and we would have not have been without service. I understand that wasn't our plan, but I mean, we just approved. How many budget amendments did we just approve? A lot. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that we could have done a budget amendment in August or September and not had had a complete 100% continuity of operations, and it would have cost us at most $132,000. But we probably could have contacted the vendor, and it might have been just like a month to month. It might have been $5,000 or $10,000. I don't know. That's not for me to figure out. But what I am saying is I never want to have a discontinuity of service because we're worried about when a grant may or may not come in. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lindsay.
Mr. Howe said most of what I wanted to say. It's really frustrating. We lost the curriculum for a few number of days, over $135,000, and we have $12 million in fund balance sitting in our fund balance. And then you throw on top of that if you just look at the vacancies we've had in personnel this year, we could have amended that money. We were driving down the road, and our tank was on E, and we had a pocket full of money, and we drove past the gas station is what it boils down to. And we ran out of gas. And I totally agree with Mr. Howe, with Ms. Parker, that if we were still waiting on ESSER approval, I guess we would just be without Discovery Ed today. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how long we were going to go, and we just, and then the other frustration I get about it, I find out, we discussed it on Tuesday night at the work session 2 weeks ago. I found out from a Twitter post from the Columbia Daily Herald that we got Discovery Ed back on Friday. I don't ask for a lot, but I could have got an email that said, "Hey, that thing you brought up, we got it covered." But thanks to Columbia Daily Herald's Twitter page, I found it out. So.
Thanks, Mike. I believe, see no more lights. I believe we're ready to vote on this agreement. Okay, the agreement passes unanimously. Moving on to zoning and facilities. Mr. Pointer and Mr. Perriman.
Good evening. The first thing you see there, 7.3.1, is the request to approve the athletic GMP with Hewlett Spencer in the amount of $1.69 million. We did, and I apologize, at the work session we had left off the list. Most of the list, we've attached that for now, is the list that we presented to you when we were talking about capital last January, when we requested the 670 or 680,000 through there. It's just been expanded out. You can see, I think this covers about 10 to 12 schools, and that list of projects is there. We have backed out, and per the conversation at the work session, the next item that's on there is athletics as well, and that is the pricing on the lighting. We talked about, we did not have that on at the work session, but we were told if we could get that price verified that we could add that. So those two go in tandem with one another. We're here to field any questions you may have.
Ms. Parker?
I just want to say, I know I wasn't here at the work session, but I did check the agenda before that, and I did not see the document that laid out how the $2 million was going to be spent. And that's my biggest concern. I think when the $2 million was taken out of fund balance, I don't even think that was on the agenda, which is totally fine. It was totally within the board's right to do so. But at the time, I said that I didn't want to see a scattered shot approach. And I think it's great that we're funding 10 to 12 schools, but I don't really see a process for how we're doing that. And I really feel like as a board, we should understand what the process is. And if the process is we just want to give money out to as many schools as we can, that's one thing. But my concern is that we have schools that are going to have giant needs that cannot ever be filled if we're constantly trying to fund everybody with a little bit here and a little bit there. We just saw this year, the capital outlay request for Santa Fe's auxiliary gym. I will say that in the entire time that I've been on this board, that's really never been something that we've even considered taking $4 million out of fund balance to build a gym for. I think there are other projects like that, and so we may need to work with the county commission to figure out how to do that, but I'm concerned that we have sports that we offer that we don't have facilities for those kids to participate in those sports. We rely upon the generosity of others, whether that's the city, whether that's the county, and some of those arrangements, I just think we need to look at those arrangements and make sure that we're not taking advantage of them and that we're really investing in ourselves. For example, I will say we built a really nice school at Central High School for about $45 million. We gave back to the county almost $900,000. How much would it cost to fix the tennis courts at Central High School? Estimate.
At least, we talked about it today, in the current location, which we would not recommend building back, about $600,000 to $625,000. If we moved locations, we may be able to do it a little bit cheaper than that, but still roughly $500,000.
And see, this is part of the problem that I feel like we have as a district. We build a nice school. We have a nice building when you drive down the road. And we actually have, thanks to Parks Motors, I think we have a purple barrier that won't show you. If you've not looked at Central's tennis courts, it's a concrete jungle. I don't even think there's nets up at this point. When you walk up to go to the baseball field or the softball field or any of that stuff, you just look down into a concrete jungle with just weeds and cracks and all kinds of stuff. I don't know that we're always going to have $2 million to pull out, and my concern is when you have a big project like that, how is this stuff getting prioritized? As long as I've been on the board, we've not done a good job of making sure that kids that don't have access to their programs on campus have transportation. I've talked about that with track. Same thing would exist for tennis. I talked to the principal at Whitthorne for their tennis team. Obviously, middle schoolers can't drive. We don't provide transportation. They've got to go to Woodland. I just think that there's playing surface issues that we have. Some of these things, I'm not clear how they got in here, honestly.
So we have the standards that the board adopted a few years ago for middle school and high school athletics, and that's across the board, across the district. what we've done is look at those standards and look at each of our schools and what we have and what we don't have. We prioritize on the front end anything that was an ADA compliant issue. We have some situations and some examples Mr. Pointer can talk to you about, folks who are in wheelchairs who got stuck in a field. And we had to physically pick them up and remove them from their wheelchair and take them to a restroom and bring them back while the wheelchair was being removed from the mud. So we prioritize ADA compliant things. We look then at some situations that are playing surface issues. We met last week, worked through, came back and did some renegotiating and some reworking of what we were doing numbers-wise, and looked and were able to come in and say we're going to create practice facilities, practice surfaces at Mount Pleasant Middle, which is a school that was built much like when we built E.A. Cox, and no facilities were provided. So we have people practicing in just a field right now. We can make a surface that is pretty safe, and when we figure out the numbers, that's for about 150 kids, $150 per kid, as we look at that surface. We looked at the tennis courts, and based on current participation at Whitthorne and Central versus the price, we're looking at somewhere between $45,000 and $50,000 per kid to fix the tennis courts. And in our mind, the priority is to come in and to give as many people as many things as we can, and to bring the facilities that we have up to current standards. Now, I will tell you, and Mr. Pointer can tell you, and Mr. Hall can tell you, and Mr. Berry can tell you, and everybody up and down our hall can tell you that I've been yelling about tennis courts for quite a while. We even went up and looked at it and stood there and discussed and talked about how horrible they look and how embarrassing it is for someone from outside of our district to come and look at it. But I can't justify we could not justify in our minds the spending of $49,000 roughly per student on a tennis court surface when we could do other things across our district. In fact, the current location of the tennis courts, our recommendation would be to remove them and to go to another site to install tennis courts. So what we did is we looked at the ADA compliant issues first. If you notice, we're only looking outside at facilities here, because out of the maintenance money that you issued to us the same night, we're going to hard bid a minimum of 4 gym floors that we know need desperate attention. That in the past we've left that cost to the schools. So we're hard bidding 4 gym floors. We're talking to and going through the district right now to look at goals, to look at volleyball sleeves, to look at other things that are in our gyms. In Spring Hill High School's building, regardless of what we do with that building moving forward, we know that the parquet floor in the auxiliary gym needs to be completely removed and a new surface put down. And we're looking at, can we do that out of the maintenance money? So with this money that was athletics, we turned our attention to outside. We went to those standards and we said, what can we do and how can we do the maximum of what we can do with this money? Part of the problem that we have, and this is, we appreciate everything we get, and this is no knock on anyone. 3 years ago, we got $500,000 to work towards moving towards these standards. This year, we have $2 million. That's a generous gift we didn't know we were going to get, and we didn't even think we would be able to do once capital was turned down. But we have no plan in the future for funding anything. So we're hoping in the future that we get more money to do something. So do we put all of our money into one big project that very few kids see, or do we spread out and we try to touch each area and do the things that we know need to be done, that we still are going to leave gaps in, but we're not leaving gaps down the road that just don't get funded? Now, I come to you guys, we come to you on the 13th for facilities discussion, for capital plan to do, because anything that we would ask for outside of normal funding would come through 189, would come through capital, athletic improvements, anything like that. We've even in the past, we've sent the purchase of computers and things like that. That's a 189 purchase. So what each person in department head is doing is they're building a 5-year plan to show you that would go along with what we're saying building-wise we would need, just so when we discuss it and we start the discussion, you have a full lens of what operationally a 5-year plan really looks like. Mr. Pointer and I have talked about taking the standards, applying them to every school that we have, sitting down and saying, Mount Pleasant High School has a football field. Does it have this? Check. Does it have this? Check. No, it doesn't have this. Circle it. Can we get a cost on that? And putting every one of those needs, and if you remember a few years ago, it was about $15 million. Putting every one of those needs into a 5-year plan, because we probably not going to get the funding for that, but we're sure not going to get it if we say, hey, 10 years from now we're going to need it. So we're going to put that and outline it and say, this is what we're doing in 5 years, and we're coming to you with a plan so that you guys can see that. We can get feedback from you, and you can either accept it or say, no, we need to do this. And if we pass it on, if we move to pass that on to the commission, then they see we're not doing what you said. We're not doing a shotgun blast into the dark and hoping we hit some plan moving forward. With this plan, again, we looked across. First, what do we have to have? What is there? There's some things that we know have to be done because they pose safety issues. Then moving forward, how do we look at those items? How do we talk about the playing surface of the Culleoka soccer field, which we know needs attention, but that's a big chunk of money right now that we know along with them they have to have the parking that's ADA compliant. We have to get sidewalks down there. So we've had to make some hard discussions and priorities just for us. And again, we're open to feedback, but it's been, please know that there's been a ton of talk and a lot of work. It just hasn't been a shot in the dark. And there has been discussion. There have been many discussions beyond this. What do we do to come back to y'all to show you that we are fully working toward it? I've asked questions such as this. We're building an auxiliary gym in Santa Fe. We don't have one in Hampshire. We don't have one at Mount Pleasant Middle. We don't have one at Mount Pleasant High School. We don't have one at Spring Hill Middle School. Do we set standards for what we're doing? And those are the questions we're going to come back to y'all with.
Well, and let me just say, I think you bring up a lot of good points. One being that you're planning on bringing that stuff back to us on November 13th, it sounded like. So I'm just saying, why do we have to rush to approve this $2 million plan when in 11 days, we could have an extensive conversation as a board about how you came about this, what your checklist looks like, what we're tackling, and why we're tackling that first. That discussion, my concern is that discussion, even though it happened internally, it didn't happen with us so that I can go forward and I can explain, hey, you can't get this because it costs too much for your kids. I will say, though, when you bring up numbers, like, you know, it costs too much to do a tennis court at Central, Mount Pleasant got their tennis court resurfaced, and their student population is significantly less than Central and Whitthorne, that share a campus combined. And when I do rough numbers, it's about the same. So, I mean, if we were willing to spend $250 a kid, thereabouts, for Mount Pleasant to have a tennis court, why can't Central and Whitthorne have a tennis court? That's part of a bigger discussion, but part of what bothers me, and it's not, I know it's not your fault, but this board, we did set standards, and we did say we want to have this, and at some point, but way before I was ever on this board, somebody said that we needed to have tennis courts at Central High School. What bothers me is that we have allowed things to deteriorate to such a state that it costs way more to fix it. It's kind of like if we have a leaky sink, and we could go to Lowe's and buy a $10 part and fix it. We don't go buy the $10 part. We wait until the pipe bursts and we have to redo our whole bathroom. And that's where we are. I feel like with like the tennis courts at Central. And I feel like we have that throughout the district. And when you talk about like an auxiliary gym, we're going down a slippery slope, because part of the other issue that we have is we have 1,500 kids at Central, over 1,000 at Spring Hill. They are competing against schools to the north that have everything that they need. And it's no different than when we talk about textbooks, in my opinion. When our kids are going to compete and they're not able to compete because they don't have the amenities here, and I know we're tight, but at the same time, it's just not fair to those kids. And the standards for a 5A or a 4A school have to be a little different than what they are, I think, at a 1A school. I mean, I think we as a board potentially should have that discussion. I'm not saying that everybody doesn't need something, but I am saying we also have agreements set up in this system where people can come to the bigger schools to participate in sports. But the bigger schools don't have what they need, and you just told me we can't afford it at the big school. We can afford it at a smaller school, but we can't afford it at a bigger school. And I just wish that we would have that discussion in open and figure out what the process looks like. The other thing I'll say is, there's money on there for Battle Creek. We had $65 million to spend on Battle Creek. I don't understand why things were not done, especially when you came to us a couple meetings ago and told us that there are 4 smart boards on every wall at Battle Creek Middle, and they don't need them. So that was poor management, I feel like, from central office to spend money and not spend it on paving, that then is taking money away from everybody else in the county that still has all these significant needs. Battle Creek, if we get with what the commission has given us, if we're moving the high school there, can that not be included as a part of that as well?
Briefly, just a couple of things. The numbers on Battle Creek we're working diligently. They will not have 4 smart boards. We assure you of that. I'm going to give you an answer, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way. Mount Pleasant tennis courts are on the side of the road, so they probably needed attention before the ones you can't see. And I don't mean that ugly, but that's probably but you can't see them, not from the side of the road.
Okay.
And I get it.
Stay
I
on
know.
topic. Stay on topic.
So let me say this though. Without direction from this board, I will never differentiate between a 4 and 5A school and a 1A school. I will never say that a child at Hampshire doesn't need a facility that's equal to a child at Central or Spring Hill. I had children that went through Spring Hill. I have a child that's playing college baseball that went through Spring Hill. I understand the facilities. I don't know that he inherently had a right to a better facility than anyone else. We brought you this list. We are diligently trying to attack this topic. If you want to wait, that's your discretion. I'm going to say this, and again, Mr. Fulbright, if you'll give me this leeway, we pulled HVAC off tonight. I had asked for it to be put on. We may wait a year now because of supply chain over 1 month, and we had it on here as an emergency for vendors because saying if we get a PO pulled tonight, we can do these HVAC projects in the summer of next year. If you wait to December the way they are, you're either going to have to do them during the school year or you're going to have to wait to the next year. So I'm all about waiting and talking about things, but I need you please to understand, and at least understand that we are coming to you in good faith, that we are putting work in on behalf of the system, and we're not just bringing something to you and just saying, hey, here it is, we hope you love this, or I don't mind you questioning it, and in fact, I hope you do, but I hope that you do understand we're putting that work into it, and I don't mean that ugly, but I'm not going to differentiate between a 1A school and a 5A school unless you tell me to.
Okay, thank you. I want to point out, I believe I asked, and maybe I just suggested it and to hear myself talk, just that we focus on, with this round of voting tonight, on ADA compliance and Title IX compliance. And some of these other things could be left off, but I wanted to focus on those. And I can't remember if I specifically asked that. Maybe I just thought it was going to be a good idea to ask it. I don't know. But actually, my first recommendation would be, let's put this off till Saturday, the 13th, because we have a work session that very next night that we could finish it and push it on to the voting meeting. There's just some of these things even though they're small little things, I don't feel like we need to be spending money on ahead of other things. I do think ADA compliance and Title IX compliance should be at the top of the list, though, and these other things could be whittled off. Might not cut but $100,000, but it still would help some. Mr. Howell.
So, as I'm sitting here, I remember back to 3 years ago when I joined this board, I met with Mr. Pointer because what I saw in the inequities and underfunding of our athletic facilities is you had one school, a large school over here, They're asking for new this and new that. They're asking for sprinkler systems, and then your smaller schools didn't know you could ask for that, and they're asking for seed and fertilizer. So one of my goals was to meet with Mr. Pointer and just say, what do we want our facilities to look like? Are we okay with inequities? Are we okay with one facility having whatever it wants because it has access to funding? It has access to really strong backing programs or local businesses versus smaller schools who don't have access to that. And are we okay with that? And if we're okay with that, we're okay with that. But luckily, he agreed that we weren't okay, and we wanted to have fair and equitable access to athletic facilities. So he set forth with a task, and it took him, I don't even remember how long. It was a long process where he physically went to every one of our schools and assessed what we had and didn't have to make so if you would step onto a field in Mount Pleasant or in Columbia, Tennessee, or in Culleoka or Hampshire, it would in essence look the same. It would have the same amenities, it would have the same access, because that's just what fair and equitable means. So then he came up with a list of what it would take to make everything fair and equitable for everybody. It was a very systematic and systemic approach to it, I thought at least, so that we know what the list was. At the time it was $15 million. That's been 3 years ago at least. So I know that $15 million is probably way off from what construction cost is today. And at that point, after that whole process, we came up with $500,000. And that's what we said, here's your $15 million list. Here is a down payment. Here is $500,000 to get started. We tasked him with the task of going through and saying what's important, what needs to come first. And he rightly so, I think, chose ADA and Title IX compliance issues because although it's nice to just have a plan of attack, which is kind of satisfies, keep you from getting sued by the federal government, if you can't afford to fund it, you can't afford to fund it. They can understand that. But if you have the funding to actually take action on some of these things, you kind of have to take action on those things. So resurfacing this or building a new field here or adding football, that has to take a back seat to what we have to do fundamentally, and that's just have a safe area for not only for our students, but for our parents and grandparents to be able to come and not get stuck in the mud trying to get to a field to watch their kid play a sport. So what comes out of it is, Ms. Parker describes it, the shotgun effect. It's pretty clear. If we want a $4 million facility to be built, we're going to have to carve out $4 million. But right now, we're doing the snowball effect. To use Dave Ramsey's term, we don't have $4 million to do this. We have $2 million. And so what do we get with $2 million? We get a lot of little things done so that they're picked off and they're done. So eventually, when we get to the point to where we can offer more money or have more money, we can start tackling the bigger things, the wants, not the needs. ADA and Title IX are not wants. We don't want to have sidewalks. We need to have sidewalks. We have to have sidewalks. So when we start talking about other things, I think that there is a plan in place. We approved the plan. I mean, we may not think we did, but we approved it. And with that first round of $500,000 worth of funding, he set out what the plan was. So going forward, I don't know why we would not stick with the plan that we've already looked at, we've already vetted, we've already approved it. It kind of makes me wonder why I'm going to spend a Saturday afternoon talking about a building plan if we have this plan and this is what we're going to do. When it comes down to it and we get funding for said plan, we just say, I don't like this. I want to do this. We have a plan in place for athletics. I don't know why we're sitting here talking about it, micromanaging this. This is not our job to micromanage the plan. This is the plan that we had set forth and approved. That's really all I have to say, but I don't know why we're even having a lengthy discussion about something that we've already talked about. I don't know.
Thank you. I will say, number one, don't show up in the afternoon on that Saturday. It's in the morning. The other thing is we have talked about revisiting the plans that we make every 6 months to a year. So that just a little context there. Mr. Lindsay?
Yes or no question, Mr. Chairman, and yes or no.
Yes,
The-
yes or no?
I can do that.
Every project listed that you've sent before us, does it fall in line with the standards that this board has approved?
Yes.
With that being said, we're really good at kicking the can down the road and say, let's talk about things a little more, or I need more information, and then then we're really good talking about how we don't need to micromanage our staff, that's their job, and we are defining micromanaging tonight. We gave them $2 million. If you gave me $2 million and said, Wayne, go make a list, tell me how you'd spend that $2 million, would it look like this list? Heck no, it's not going to look like it. Mine'd be better than this, according to me. But that's not my job. So, do I agree with everything on the list? No, I don't agree with it. But I'm not going to sit here and nitpick it. That's what you guys get paid to do. So we have the money. This is a fraction of what we need to do. Travel around and look at our facilities compared to other facilities, or don't even compare them to other facilities. Just look at our facilities. We are so lacking when it comes to athletic facilities. There's so much more that we need to do. Mr. Perriman brought up a great idea. We need to come up. We need to dedicate ourselves to the fact that we're going to provide funding each and every year to try to get in line, because we're just that far behind. But I'm not going to sit here and beat it to death, but I will make a motion to approve this GMP.
Okay, we have a motion for Mr. Lindsay, a second for Mr. Howell. We will continue with our discussion. Mr. Moore?
Thank you. I appreciate the work. And Mr. Perriman, I know you had mentioned this. I don't think anybody thinks that you guys didn't put work in on this. I think you obviously have. I think the issue I see is not one of micromanaging. It's just I think when we approved $2 million of spending without having a kind of a purpose already set out for it, we kind of as a body put the cart before the horse in some way. So we came up with some problems because of this that I don't think we were expecting. Being that I don't think anybody last year expected to spend this much money on sports facilities. And it created a much larger list than I think any of us would have thought we could possibly tackle. For me, I guess whether this passes or not tonight is irrelevant to me. One way or another, I think we need to revisit the process. Because for me, I think you brought up some good points. As you guys have discussed this internally, and I know you've had a bunch of discussions and probably argued quite a bit with each other about some of these things, I can imagine. I think some of those things were things, and I think Ms. Parker's bringing that up, that we probably need to argue about up here. That I just don't think we did yet because we didn't realize they were issues. Like, I'm not trying to pick apart the thing, but for me, the distinction between parking lots, regular school parking lots and athletic parking lots, that's a tough one. Like, I'm not sure as a board if we really looked at should that be sports spending or should that just be capital expenses. I don't know. I mean, I think that's kind of the things I think Ms. Parker's getting at that we kind of need to dig into. Your distinction between indoor sports facilities and outdoor, it makes sense the way you explain it, but again, I don't know as a board, is that the direction we need to do? Because one of the things I keep thinking back to, and a very unfair thing we have to look at is how we balance the spendings that are coming out of fund balance with county commission money. It's a very real concern that we could do a whole lot with our own money, and then as our funding body may choose to decide that, hey, they've got it covered. And that sounds great until we get to some of these very large and very expensive things that the reality is we can't pull some of these things out of fund balance at some point. We're just not going to be able to. And I think, again, I really would encourage us, whether this passes or not, I think we need to have some extensive discussions as a board so that we can offer clarity to staff and join in with some of their discussions about how these are, and you guys obviously have kind of bannered that around. So again, whatever happens here, could we please discuss this further at the next one? And really, I think the important thing is that this board get a unanimous and kind of a comfort level with how we're proceeding, whichever way that is. And it may not be exactly how I think it is, Ms. Parker brought up some things. I thought you don't believe there should be a distinction between the class schools on how that plays out as far as the larger schools versus the smaller ones. But I think those are some discussions we probably ought to still have and at least flesh them out, and then as a board decide that is or is not the direction we want to go. And then you guys have some clarity from us, and we can all be moving ahead in the same direction.
Thank you. Mr. Sims?
I don't know which one would need to answer. What exactly, as far as the Battle Creek Middle ADA problems, what is that? Because I'll be honest, when I saw that on the list, it irked me a little bit with new facilities.
And I will answer. We gravelled around the baseball and the softball field when we were finishing up that project because we did not have enough money to pave those areas. They probably need to be concreted. We didn't have the money to do that. If we had paving money, we would have paved the parking lot at Battle Creek Middle that was left undone, that is probably falling into the high school program because we're going to have it for football parking at the stadium. We didn't have enough money. We didn't want to leave that kind of a muddy mess around that field, so we came in and crusher-runned it as far as we could around. It's not suitable long-term to hold up to where we are. But that was what they were looking at, is coming in and paving around that field, just where you weren't, if you were a person that was in a wheelchair or something like that, you wouldn't drive down, come down the sidewalk that's concrete or come up the driveway that's asphalt and then suddenly just hit gravel and be in a mess. So that's why he had that on there while they were trying to address those. And he identified that as an ADA issue, so that we took those first on the list, even though that was a new site. We didn't have the money to finish that.
Okay, great.
And last thing, really, I like the list. I see a lot of issues that are at some larger schools that need to be fixed, some smaller schools that need to be fixed, and really, I think we're going to see, when you drive up to these schools, you're going to see new press boxes, I mean, there's a lot of things on this list that is going to stand out to the public, and it's across the county. It's not only at a particular school, and so I am definitely going to be for this.
Thank you. Mr. Harlan?
Yes, I was sitting here listening to Ms. Parker, and she brought up some very good points. And it hit me pretty hard about Columbia, Central, and Whitton. And a good percentage, she made some very valid points. But the bulk of Columbia taxpayers' money is basically in Columbia. And, I understand fairness and facilities equal out and so forth. But at the same time, I still want to acknowledge that you cannot overlook population that's more or less in Columbia area or even Columbia Central, Whitton, and then we trying to compete, or Central or Whitton or even other schools is trying to compete in certain athletic programs, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference in even the practice field and so forth. And somehow, as a board, I guess we got to come together and figure out what areas do we want to tackle that's fair, that everybody can get an understanding to what is fair. If that makes sense. And the second thing I do want to say to the Perryman point is that and to the board members, the $500,000, if that's allocated each year or supposed to be allocated each year, why are we not agreeing to that $500,000 every year? Why is the athletic is not getting the increased money every year, or this money set aside for that every year? And I maybe that's a budget issue. I'm quite sure it's a budget issue, but I'm still concerned about maintenance getting theirs, or is it maintenance slash athletic facility? So my concern is, why are we not setting aside this $500,000 every year, so everything won't just crumble down, and we trying to this big mad rush trying to fix everything.
Thank you. Mr. Hooper.
Yeah, so this discussion, I would say, actually kind of hurts a little bit, because being that a kid who played baseball at a 1A school and things like that, you always think it, and then when you hear it out loud here, it really stings. So, I mean, there is no difference. You can beat 5A schools with your 1A equipment or whatever you want to call it, but the thing is, they may have that inequality going out of county, but we're going to have it in our own county with people we go to school with, and we're going to see that every day. I don't know what else we could have expected from giving them $2 million for athletic capital improvements, but this is exactly what I expected. A large shot that's going to tackle a lot of little things. Basically, if you play video games, you're killing the ads, so you can focus on the big problems, because you can ask for money for the big problems. These little problems get overlooked like they're getting overlooked right now. We're not going to cut any off. I wouldn't think so, because there's still things that need to be done, and they're on the list we've already approved. So I don't think any of this should have came as a surprise to anyone here.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to say my piece here at the very end. I voted against just giving a $2 million approval without having a clear purpose, so I'm not going to say I told you so, but I'll not say it. I think I would have easily voted for this had it totally been ADA and Title IX. I mean, I know we have a plan that we approved, and I know you're working off of that plan, but there's a reason we're revisiting the plan every year, and really probably need to do it more than once every year. We are going to be looking at it again on the 13th, regardless of what this vote turns out to be. And that's why, I don't feel like we're kicking the can down the road by delaying it just a week and a half. So those are some of my thoughts. I think that, like everybody else, I agree with about 80%, 85% of what's on this list. But that's just not enough. That's just not enough for me to go with this when we have an opportunity to revisit it without going a yes or no vote right now. So with that said, I believe we are ready to vote on this plan as presented. And this plan passes. So get to work. Get some lights put up out there. That's what I'm saying. All right, going on to the next bid.
And this money was pulled out and was not included in a GMP because we secured a bid through Sourcewell that was actually cheaper than we put up lights the last time we put up lights. They do have a price increase. They had a price increase yesterday that they absorbed. There's a price increase on the 11th that they said they would not absorb. They would have to give us a new quote based on that. But if this was approved tonight, we would take down the lights at Columbia Central softball field and the lights at Santa Fe softball field and put the new lights up that are the LED lights that are compliant with or up to the standard we've been using. And we would go ahead and pull that purchase order tomorrow. This work probably would not be done until sometime in the spring, but we can lock the pricing in if we pull a purchase order before the 11th. It will go up if we wait till after the 11th.
That was going to be my question. I'm assuming when you said price change, they weren't going to drop it any for us.
They absorbed yesterday's. They said they would not absorb the 11th.
All right. I have a motion to approve from Mr. Lindsay, second from Mr. Howe. Ms. Irvin.
I just have a question for you, Mr. Perryman. I'm very much in favor of this, but my question is, if we wait to the spring, how's that going to impact our season? Because I know both of these are spring sports. So
we replaced the old fixtures on the field last year. At Santa Fe, particularly, what we ran into, we needed to replace 5 ballasts last year, and when we looked, there were only 11 in the whole nation. We own all of them now because we didn't want to run into a situation where we get ready to get to the spring and we had 10 more lights out and back at the chiller at McDowell. We're kinda limping it along. But we can get through this year with the lighting that they had last year. Then we would get this done probably as soon as the season's over.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other lights. I believe we're ready to vote. All right, the lights passed unanimously. They'll be able to see those fly balls in the outfield. Moving on, we've removed item 3. Let's move to number 4, the sale of McDowell. I do have an individual who has asked to speak on this. At this time, I'll ask Chairman Morrow to approach the stand. If you'll give your name, address, and your position within the county. A little bit, yeah.
I know this stuff. There we go. Okay, thank you. Of course, I'm Don Morrow, Chairman of the Murray County Commission. Thank you for having me tonight. Ms. Irwin, you didn't say a lot tonight. You want to be a commissioner? I'd like that. Not saying a lot. But thank you for having me. I came here a few months back and asked you to tap the brakes on McDowell. I appreciate you doing that. I've only addressed this body twice in my 16 years of politics because like I said last time, I feel that you know what you're doing. You're elected to do a job, and it's not my job to come watch you. But it is interesting tonight to be in on the meeting because we do kick the can down the road as well. So don't think that you're the only ones that do it. But I was authorized by the building committee to be here to talk about McDowell. I know that y'all did not get any bids on the property. I don't know what your thought process is, but if you're going to lower the minimum bid specs on that, I think Murray County and maybe the city of Columbia would be interested in getting that land. I would like to propose that, in good faith, you consider donating that land back to the county. I have several reasons why, and if you'll hear those out, I would appreciate it. I think, first of all, as your funding body, we're going to continue to fund the Murray County schools because that's our job. But at the same time, I think it looks, the way we're facing growth, and I'm not going to get into growth, y'all know what it's like. We just appropriated $74 million for a school, and we'll have to build some more pretty soon. So I'm not going to hit on the growth, but Murray County government is busting at the seams. Our budget office, we're fixing to move UT Ag out, build them a building so we can have room for all our offices. It's crazy. And what we're doing, we just bought, of course, the Daily Herald to do something with our court system. It's overcrowded, so the growth is affecting all of us. She could not be here, but we have discussed the possibility of taking this land if y'all were to consider donating it to us, because we can utilize it for parks or a rec center, possibly a civic center down the road, which would bring revenue and sales tax, which would help the school board as well down the road. We are just overcrowded. We know that 7 acres, 5 blocks off the square at some point, if we hit 150,000 people, and I believe someday we may succeed that, we're going to need more space as well. The school may need it at some point. You may come back and need a school in that area that we could work with you on. So, you know, I think what we would do is just appeal to you to consider, instead of taking 750,000 or whatever your minimum bid would be, to let the property come back to the county. I think if we, and I'm just saying, if it happens this way and we joint venture with the city, with their public works, with our particular assistance with our solid waste department, and the in-kind we can get for than a lot of people. We've had people all over the country probably know that Murray County being number 1 in the state for growth, and no one wants to look at 7 acres because that building's on it. I think it's going to behoove all of us to try to work together on this, and what we're going to do, we're going to ensure growth in Murray County, all of us, because we're in this together. And and I'd like to introduce 2 commissioners here, by the way. Commissioner Stovall came out tonight, and Commissioner Barner, I'd like to thank them for their support. I don't know, the other ones may still be meeting. We were arguing about a lot of things tonight. It's been a pretty rough 2 nights on us. But I do know that it's just something I wish you would just consider, because you know the controversy you've all had on McDowell, tearing the school down in that particular part of town. I think that we could make it work and keep the McDowell name down the road, whether it be McDowell Park, McDowell Civic Arena, whatever the case could be. But this transition can make history while preserving the history of Murray County. It's unprecedented that you would give anything back to the county, but this would be a good move in the eyes of the community that we're working together. And all of us have tried in session, Michael can tell you, we talked some. I think we're trying to work together to get the best we can for this county. Y'all are in a tough position. When people come up here, they're talking about kids, man, that pulls on the heartstring. We're talking about highways and road construction, things of that nature. So I admire what you have to do here. But in closing, I would say just please consider letting us have that land in good faith, and we can utilize it for the landscape of Murray County down the road, and we'll try to work hard, like I say, to keep that McDowell name and preserve that history. And I don't think you'll have rebuttal, do you, for your meeting?
No, but I'm getting ready to.
Okay, well, you're the chairman.
I mean, this is not going to be directed at you. This is going to be some thoughts that I've had
Sure.
Throughout this process, and I think the fact that we didn't receive any bids reiterates some of the feelings that I'd had all along. Biggest hindrance to the sale of this property, and the reason that we wanted to rush this property to be sold, was to get rid of the liability on our side of having that big building there. This would be an answer to that problem. I don't think any of us had any kind of illusions of begin with. I think that Mr. Morrow brings up some valid points. I think keeping the location within the property of the county/city would be wise, simply because property is going to be very scarce throughout Columbia and Murray County in general. So I would totally be on board with moving this direction, primarily because, like I said, from day one we talked about getting rid of the liability of that building, because right now it's just sitting empty, and it's on us if something happens. I would much rather it be on you if something happens, quite honestly. But that brings me to my last point. I have heard on multiple occasions the schools being accused of trying to dump their problems back on the county by a few commissioners. And I cannot see a better illustration of that complaint than doing this. So the only way I would be in favor of this is if I had some sort of assurance that anyone who took that attitude would be put in line. And that mindset corrected. So those are my only thoughts. Mr. Howell, your lights on.
Well, please don't gauge the full county commission on the actions of just a few. I'll say that. Thank you.
So I'm going to start off by saying I think that moving forward that this would be a good idea. I do have a few questions that maybe Jake could answer. What obligations or stipulations are there if we were to donate this to the county? I mean, is that something we can do? I mean, I know it's surplus currently. If that's acceptable or allowable.
You can. I mean, to another governmental entity. You can't donate it to a private entity, but to another governmental entity you can.
Okay.
Donation, if you chose to do so, we'd have to talk about that and figure out what kind of form that would take. But yeah, you are authorized to donate. We've run into that with school buses and things before. You can't donate it privately, but you can donate it to governmental entities. And
I knew we had with school buses, but a school bus with 100,000 miles is different than 7 acres. So I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on that. And I'm glad you mentioned that string, because I mean, I know that there are some commissioners that would be more than happy to tear that building down and then turn around and sell it for $3 million, and I don't see that as being beneficial to our community, is selling that property for $3 million. I do like the idea of a possibility, of what you've mentioned, and then maybe even a museum of some kind would be kind of nice too, to have a continuing education, basically. It'd be in the education families, per se, and a place for our kids to have a field trip to, other than the Polk home or one of our farms. I like the idea very much so. But like Mr. Fulbright says, I would like to have some sort of, I don't know, maybe an official asking. So that way it's not just like, hey, we're dumping this off, bye, move. I would like the county commission to have some sort of agreement to where they're like, we would like to have this for, and I'm not saying specifically, but a broad category of things. That would be better than us just dumping it off and just, you're asking for it. You want the property, so.
Sure. Pardon?
I've got his off. I think procedurally the way that we would need to go because we had something totally different planned for our discussion tonight. If this looks like a direction we might want to lead, we would kick this to the work session and then do an official vote in December, and that would give the commission time to pull something together for our work session to say, let's go this route. Mr.
Well,
Lynn,
if I may respond,
go ahead.
we do not meet in December. We take that one break. Now, for something like this, we might call a meeting if it's of that importance, unless we need to move to January. But we do not meet in December. When you say, Mr. Howell, that you wanted a formal asking with the county commission, that would be a resolution. We speak by resolution. It wouldn't be a formal, may we have it, it will be by resolution.
Would that need to go through a committee to make it onto the November agenda?
Pardon, say that again?
Would this proposed resolution need to go through a committee before it went to the?
It would probably need to go to admin here, so we would not have to go to budget.
Okay.
Unless we had a closing cost or something on it. I don't know if that would, I don't think that would be a problem.
Okay.
And one other thing, earlier, we had given those corners, those 2 small parcels, we had donated that to the school board at one time to make that whole 7 acres complete, so
Seems
we've
like
done
I've
those
heard about that
transactions.
before.
Yeah.
Mr. Lindsay.
I agree with you guys. I guess I look at it at a little different angle. We're, and it's politics, it is what it is, but we're doing a salary study, and we know what that study's gonna come back and gonna say that we need to pay our employees more money. So I'm sure we're gonna be asking you guys for more money, and I'd hate to, burn a bridge over a piece of property. I think it's a good faith move on our part, to offer it back to the county. If they have a need for it, and they even though they don't know exactly what that need may be now, they feel like they have a need for it. And as Mr. Fulbright said, from the get-go, I wanted rid of the liability. I didn't care what we got out of it. So if the school system passes that liability off, and the county has a use for it, it's a win-win for both of us. So I'm totally in favor of transferring that property.
Just because it's donated doesn't mean that down the road we wouldn't see a financial benefit from this.
Correct, okay.
This would have to go to budget committee because it's a transfer of assets. Anything we surplus or could sell at any point in time. The budget committee meeting is next Monday. So, if Scott's obliged and Don, you take it to him, he can put it on for new business, and we can let Daniel know, and there could be a vote on it November 15th if the other committees don't freak out.
Yeah, we could possibly do some kind of formal offer, asking them. Thank you, Doug, for volunteering that info. We could probably do that through budget, and then maybe get something in a resolution for a formal asking if that's what you really need, and then we'll go from there, and then we meet again in January. So.
I'm going to be a little different, a little contrary to, as I have been a few times tonight, but I think in theory it sounds good, but honestly when you sit here and start talking about a rec center, I mean, I've been on this board since we've talked about fixing McDowell, and we came to you and we asked you for money, and then this board spent the money elsewhere, and that was on us. We then went and asked to fix it up. I think this sets a really dangerous precedent if we're going to let our buildings fall into disrepair so that then we can donate it back to the county. I think that's one concern that I have. The other concern I have is based on the things that you're talking about doing, that sounds like additional expense for y'all. That means you won't have money to spend on schools. If you decide to put up a rec center for $5, $6, $7, $8 million, I don't know what it's going to cost, that's $5 or $6, $7, $8 million that you can't allocate towards our teachers' salaries. That's money that you can't allocate towards our athletic fields and that $15 million list that we just talked about. So I don't think any organization that's ever been truly successful has just donated an asset. And even though there is a liability associated with this, we're all Murray County taxpayers. So if we're just shifting it from one Murray County taxpayer to another Murray County taxpayer, are we really doing our taxpayers any service by just shifting the liability over to the county? I personally would just like more assurances about how the county commission is going to continue to support our schools and have a true plan for how this transfer potentially would benefit our students, our teachers, and our community in the planning that we need to do going forward.
May I respond to that? Like I said, the rec center was just one idea that we've talked with the city. Al Ray's worked on that as well with some of the city officials. We do not know, in all honesty, Ms. Parker, the growth is coming so fast. We could have to have it for county offices at one point. I said earlier that we are popping at the seams. We're moving our whole courthouse 3 blocks down. That's an unprecedented move for the landscape of Murray County. That's something this commission's had to face, is moving a courthouse that's been there since 1910 to prepare for the growth we're facing. So we really don't know. We just know 7 acres, 5 blocks off the square, the way we're growing is going to be a very vital part, because the last time I looked, they're not making any more land in Columbia, Tennessee. Thank you.
I was just gonna say, I think it's pretty clear we can't settle this tonight, so can we just go ahead and talk about moving this to the work session, unless somebody really wants to make a motion otherwise? We can just bring it to the retreat, the retreat, and discuss it with the rest of the facilities there.
I'd like to make a motion if the chairman would accept it.
You may make a motion.
I move that we transfer ownership to the county up on a majority vote of approval by the county commission.
Do I hear a second?
The fact that motion failed for lack of a second maybe goes back to Mr. Moore's point that we need to have a little more discussion on this.
The point well taken. We can formally bring you the request, or we'll wait to hear from you.
Wait, don't wait to hear from me just yet. We have our retreat set for the 13th. And then we have a work session on the 16th. You wouldn't have anything, since we're not really making any kind of overtures to give it. You wouldn't need to do anything with the budget or getting a resolution pulled together officially, unless you wanted to put just a resolution on there of support for this motion. I mean, we could do that. You wouldn't have that. Well, you would have that on the 15th, so we would have it by our work session.
Correct. We could have an official resolution of support to accept the land, if you wanted something that you could take to your committee, to your retreat. So. And
I will tell you that I don't expect that to be a unanimous yes vote. And I also will tell you I will closely be watching and listening to the conversation that takes place around that. Is it agreeable of this body to wait until after the commission meeting on the 15th and take this up at the work session on the 16th of November for us, with an added discussion on the 13th around this? Okay. Are you good with that, sir?
Yes, sir. And all due respect, it's 22 of us. It's rather unanimous. Ordering pizza is a nightmare.
I know. Believe me.
Thank you.
I've been on there. I know what you're talking about.
Thank
but I still am not going to take the school board being insulted by any member of those 22.
Point taken.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Wow. With all that said, Mr. Perriman, do you have any other further discussion? Mr. Moore.
Sorry, I know we'd skip it there. I had asked to add the 7.5 discussion of the reopening plan before we get to Mr. Perriman's stuff, if that's okay.
Well, no, he's number 4.
Is there another one? I apologize for that.
That's fine. I just wanted him to wrap up the McDowell conversation.
We were actually going to recommend that we discuss it on the 13th. We've got some information different than what y'all talked about that we're gathering that we may find that you find interesting, that could determine where you go with a couple of things. So our recommendation was going to be talked about on the 13th if that was agreeable.
Well, it sounds like we're agreeable. Now, Mr. Moore, 7.5, the COVID opening plan. Wait a minute.
Special question committee.
I had added, I don't know why I put it in the zoning and facility section. All right, anyway, okay, let's go to the appointment of the special question committee. David, were you in on any of those conversations recently? Betty, Mr. Hooper, it was. Would you I caught you at the worst time, didn't I? Just as a recap, it is time to start the discussions around collaborative conferencing. Ms. Kinzer and Mr. Hooper had an initial meeting, and I'm going to try to pull up the email while you're talking about it, of what Ms. Kinzer sent me about it. Could you tell us what your discussion was?
Yeah, so when we got in there, we had a discussion about how the poll would be sent out to all the workers. What we decided on was that they'd be notified through email, and they'd have a 2-day window from morning until 5 p.m. on that Friday, from Thursday and Friday.
I wondered about that.
And then they would submit this form via our own IT department, and then from there we'd come back and meet to go over that data.
All right, what we need to do is appoint the actual committee now. What we're looking at, let's see, I'm going through my notes here. Probably looking at about 5 board members.
Not yet. What we're looking at tonight is the special question committee. I just need you to vote to formally appoint a special question committee. That would be the group of people in charge of putting that poll together. The 2 questions mandated by state law and the format, the mechanics of that poll, and then you have to come back if a certain percentage of your certified employees vote that they want to collaborate. You'll have to come back before December 1 and appoint your committee at that point.
Okay. So how many people are we looking? Are we just? Give me some more guys. This is totally foreign to me.
I think we talked about 2 and 2, 2 from the board and 2 from the union. So the MCEA.
Okay.
And I believe that the MCEA may have already designated who those 2 people would be, but if they have not, then you can just appoint your 2 and then the other 2 to be designated by the MCEA. And if you want to do more than 2, you certainly can. You can do up to 11, but that's completely up to you. All these folks do is just the questions that are asked are just the 2 questions mandated by state law. Really, it's more just the mechanics, as Mr. Hooper said, the mechanics of getting that poll out and how it's going to be reviewed and reported back. And then you won't appoint your conferencing committee until after that poll comes back.
Okay, so then is that pretty much just you and Ms. Kinzer continuing?
At that point, yeah.
I mean, is that the board? And then when we get to the larger committee, then I do have a list of names that she's asked me to consider.
That's right, and state law mandates you not appoint that committee until after the results of this poll comes out, and make sure that your certified employees want to collaborate.
I'll let her know she's been.
Do we need to make a motion to appoint Mr. Hooper and Ms. Kinzer to the board members of the Special Question Committee? As well as 2 members to be designated by the MCEA.
Okay. Now, they have had their first meeting.
They've had an informal get-together.
Okay, they had an informal get-together is what you had. I'm just hearing in my ear here. All right, I have a motion. A second for Mr. Sims. Ms. Parker.
All right, because we've gotten sued over this before, like the last time we did the special question, are you going to be involved in this so we don't get involved in another lawsuit on people, the manner that it's done and how open the email process was? We have some checks and balances on that.
Absolutely, I'll be as involved as you guys want me to be. The last time we only had
super involved, Jake.
one member of the Special Question Committee, there were some issues with how the results were reported out, when people got access to the technology part of the equation. So, yeah, I'll be glad to help, and maybe we can not repeat those mistakes.
Yeah, that would be great.
The other issue I was going to say is there was also, I think, some discussion. I know we said MCEA, but I think we also got into the pet issue the last time. So how does that work?
Not on the special question part. Since the initial balloting came from MCEA, then they're the ones that are going to be on the special question committee.
Okay.
After that, state law designates who depending on how many votes, say Pet or unaffiliated gets, then that'll determine how we, constitute the committee that collaborates. So yeah,
Okay.
we'll cover that down the road, but, for now, it's just gonna be you guys and the MCEA working together to get a poll out.
Okay, so we have the nomination of Ms. Kinzer and Mr. Hooper to do that. I guess, let's take the vote and then I'll ask my question. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I believe we're ready to vote.
One question.
Okay, Mr. Lindsey.
Are we sure that Ms. Kinzer's okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 'cause she did volunteer to work with, Mr. Hooper on this, and they've already had one initial meeting, so if not, we'll,
I will say, I spoke to Ms. Kinzer recently about this. I don't think she wants to be involved in the collaborative conferencing process, but I think she would be okay
at
with
this stage, I agree. I agree totally. All right. Now I believe we're ready to vote.
If we could just make sure the notes reflect it, as well as the MCEA members to reflect that we're actually approving the entire, group, not just the two board members.
So I guess here's my question going forward. What will the next step be? Okay. All right, so I guess it'll be up to you and Ms. Kinzer to pull the group together.
Can the chair not just appoint that committee?
The law specifically says the board shall appoint. I mean, I don't know that I'd be comfortable with you guys delegating that ability to happen outside a board meeting.
Yeah, I don't know that I would either.
Because it's not just you guys, there's some other things that go into that as far as the unaffiliated and picking that person and some other things, so I think we may have to do it in a board meeting.
Okay.
One more suggestion then, could we maybe, and this is maybe putting pressure on Mr. Hooper and Ms. Kinzer, but what if we expedited this process and we're meeting again on, our work session's on the 16th, if we were to have a special call meeting before that or after that meeting just to take up that one issue, and then we would meet the requirements of the law of December 1st.
If they can get the ballot done and out, and they feel like that's enough time for your certified employees to vote on it, that'd be okay. But I just don't know what you guys had in mind. I don't know what the MCA's got in mind as far as how long that needs to be out there.
So that first one we talked about was keeping it open from a Thursday morning all the way through a Friday at 5 to give them like 1.5 days. We talked about it. I mean, and that's what we considered, and then it would end on the 30th, or that would be the last day, so that way we could all meet together on the 30th, which will be the next Monday, I think, actually, from that Friday, and then go over the data that day. So.
Well, the only problem with that is that takes in Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it would be before fall.
So you're looking at, would there be a way, if y'all could get together here, put it out here, and then we could have it by this? Or that may be rushing too much, quite honest. I mean, okay. I'll get with Mr. Hooper and Ms. Kinzer just on a timeline, and then worst comes to worst, we'll have a quick meeting on the 30th of November. I'd rather have it on the 16th, but we're also not gonna step out of line and do things inappropriately. Now, Mr. Moore, yours, seven, or I don't even know what the number of it is anymore.
7.5, I appreciate it. So I'd asked to add on to the discussion for tonight, the discussion of the reopening plan that we had originally put into place at the beginning of this year as a requirement of state. The concern that's kind of drawing this is I've had parents and other concerned people that are worried about some of the restrictions we've got in place due to the COVID and kind of the over-encompassing nature of that. One of the concerns I've had all along was how we never really put any kind of sunsets on some of those changes, and I have been worried that as a board is kind of puts us into a position where things may just kind of hang around longer than maybe we intend for them to, or that would be fair and appropriate for the public. So to address that, and there's different ways to address that, I guess one of the suggestions I would have, again, we do have a reopening plan. I would like to take that reopening plan and consider voting into place, and I'll discuss a little further tonight before that, but one option would be to put a motion in place to sunset the current reopening plan as of 12/31 of this year, with the expectation that staff can do two things: bring us anything they think needs to continue past that, and anything they bring us would also have a sunset date in some format, so that if the board chooses not to take any action, it will automatically expire. Again, my concern is that we would have policies or procedures that are taking place that just hang around, and we're not sure why they're still here. And frankly, through some discussions with the superintendent, I have concerns about things being treated differently at different schools. I think that kind of puts us in an awkward position where maybe that wasn't the intention when we first went through this. I think the intention was to take some specific precautions and delegate some authority this board has over to the superintendent to be in charge of those things. I think maybe we may need to rein that back in a little bit. So in that case, and I know the superintendent said he still wants to check on something as far as what the state is going to require, but I would like to make a motion that we would expire or terminate our current, I guess the reopening plan is the correct language for that, as well as any policies that reference COVID as of 12/31 of 2021.
Mr. Ard.
Yes. Don't freak out about that just yet. Again, the intention would be if there's something such as that COVID leave that staff needs to have go past that date, it would be brought to us for us to vote on and extend for a defined period of time past that.
So that does have an end date on it.
Then that's fine.
It was June 30th, 2022 on
Okay.
the policy.
That's fine. And again, the intention here is to make sure that we don't have things that just kind of hang around. And if that has a defined date, I think that is clearly something this board's already taken action on, and to extend to that point. Yeah, I saw you sweating over there for that, so I apologize. But again, my intention is not to do anything weird, and the intention is not just to get rid of everything, but I think it's probably good procedure for us to not, as we consider these changes, make sure that we put an end date on them in the future, and this probably extends to other actions we take as well.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. My question, Mr. Wolver, I know we had quite a bit of discussion around, is this a board-approved policy or a superintendent-guided policy? Because technically, I believe from our discussions, we never had to approve it.
Yeah, I think you'd be giving guidance to the superintendent as far as what your expectations would be. But, you know, your superintendent is in charge of day-to-day operations of the school system. So those two things are going to butt heads. But yes, I mean, to express your wishes to the superintendent that there be a sunset for that plan, I understand that. But I think he's still going to have to exercise his authority to be able to manage day-to-day things. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
No, it did, because I remember our conversation that specifically was around the mask mandate, was our board voted and expressed a clear opinion But we still recognize at the end of the day, being a first month superintendent, he could have bucked us and said, no, I'm not gonna pay attention to what you said. But that, do what?
I believe the mask specifically changed
Yeah, we're not-
per governor's order. The board had to be the one to explicitly vote that in or out.
Right, but I think that illustrates my point, that it was ultimately his and his staff's decision.
Correct.
We definitely provided clear and unconvoluted guidance on what our expectations were. So that's why I wanna make sure that we word this right and that we approach this right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I was gonna say, that's kind of the reason I had two parts to this. The intention would be, and I think we discussed this as we came back to school, that the majority of the board seemed to be of the opinion that we wanted to return back to an almost, as much as possible, normal year. I think we are wrapping up a semester into this. I think that still seems to be the will of the board, and I think this would send some direction to our superintendent. That is what we wish. However, I do want staff to, for the next work session, bring us back anything he feels like still needs to be modified. And I think that's a good discussion for us to have, so that we're very clear on what we expect this to look like for the next semester of school. And if he feels strongly that something needs to be put into place, for example, we need to make modifications at the schools for visitor policy, that's been one of the things that have come up, then I would expect that he would bring that to us and champion that cause, and then we as a board can address that.
Okay. Ms. Irvin.
So, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention, David, and getting it on here. My concern in wanting to be responsible as a board member is that I've not really had a chance to go back and reminisce on that policy. There's definitely things that I'd like to see roll off, but questions that come to my mind that I don't know that I can make a good conscious vote on until I have answered are things like, I definitely feel like we need to get our parents more engaged, definitely get them back in the buildings as much as we can. But the fact that I also realize that COVID's not going to just go away, and I've had kids that have been impacted by COVID before we adopted, at least to my understanding, before we adopted this policy, and they received no instruction whatsoever. And I know that that was a disaster for a lot of kids who did get COVID and had to be quarantined. So, like, one thing, is this going to be removing, like, any remote instruction, too? I mean, I'm not real clear on that. It would not, that would still stay in place, or?
As of right now, we don't have the authority to put the district on a remote, but we will continue what we call CREST when a student is out with COVID. We will continue. That's just best practice for kids, so we will continue that.
Okay, that was one of my concerns. A second concern, which Ms. Garrard had kind of mentioned too, is we had just passed, like, the pay, like if a teacher were to be out, that they would be eligible for that leave time. So if we do away with this, then what would that won't impact at all, or would it? I'm just trying to get clarity in my mind. No, that policy is separate from leave. Okay. That's where I'm just trying to be responsible and answer that. So, okay. I think those were the two main issues.
And if I could go into that a little bit, that was part of the reason I wanted to set an expiration date of 12/31. That gives us almost 2 months that staff can go ahead and kind of get their ducks in a row, make sure if there's something needs to stay, it needs to stay. And again, our superintendent can bring that to us, and we can make sure we're covering that. I didn't want it to end today or tomorrow, but I think that gives us ample time to meet that need.
So basically, if I'm hearing what you're saying, would your motion be, you help me clarify, would your motion be that we address at the next work session the COVID policy and look at revisions providing, okay, tell me what you want.
All right. And my motion would be that we are setting all of these to expire. And anything that our superintendent wants to bring back, he can bring it back, and it will be new actions with expiration dates of their own when he brings us those.
I guess that's my question, and Mr. Wilver, you can help me clarify this. Any expiration date we set is, in essence, a suggestion.
Your policies are different. You can, I mean, those belong to you, and you can deal with those as you choose. But yes, as far as the operational side of it, that's going to be up to the superintendent. But I think you could you could express that in a board action that you would like to see those things sunset, but as you pointed out, I mean, the plan was more put to you as an advisory, thing more than your approval being mandated, so, yeah, I understand where you're going. I think that's fine. Policies are different, though. The policies, you can begin to sunset those.
Okay. Mr. Hickman.
Let me clarify to the board also, the difference between policy and what our COVID reopening plan is. Right now, we really only have one COVID policy, and that is for employee pay for if they are out with COVID. What we're discussing now is at the beginning of the year, the state required us to turn in another reopening plan, which piggybacked the ESSER 3.0 requirements that we had to have a reopening plan included in that, which had to be approved by the state, for both from the state and for the ESSER grants. So what we produced was basically a procedure in our COVID plan, and we brought it before you guys. And the good thing about this plan, it gives us the option, and it kind of goes along with what Mr. Moore was alluding to, is we have to review it at 6-month period. And so that's where we're at. But obviously, you know, we want to include all stakeholders as we can as we look at that, because as things change, we need to make sure we're fluid and change with it as well.
Okay, just, Mr. Lindsey.
I think maybe some of Mr. Moore's frustration comes from, we have some contradictions between what our policy says and what we're actually doing. And I know we've all been getting feedback, or I assume you guys got the same feedback I've gotten lately about visitors in schools. So we're not allowing that. But if we look at policy 3.201, it says we will allow it. So does our policy override our COVID restrictions? What's the deal? And, you know, so I guess that's where some of the question comes in. And then along those lines, we're not allowing visitors in schools during the day, but I sat in a full gym last night at a middle school basketball game, and I think tonight we're having parent-teacher conference at some level. I know elementary is Thursday night, so we're inviting the public into our buildings, just not when some kids are there, because there was a gym full of kids last night. So, I get the frustration that people are having, and I get that at some point we got to get back to normal. Now, what we decide normally is may look different than it used to look. Then that's a legitimate conversation we can have. But as of right now, policy 3.201, it's entitled Safety, says that only students assigned to school, staff, and parents of students and other persons with lawful and valid business can enter the grounds and into the building during the hours of student instruction. So we have a policy that says that I can go to my kid's class if I want to, but I really can't, because when I go to pick my kid up from school, if I have to carry him to the doctor, I stand on the sidewalk and wait on him now. They won't let me in the school. So, but a policy says that I can. So we have some contradiction going on, and we do need to get that clarified.
Okay, so if I understand it, obviously I'm struggling, but I think I'm understanding it better. The motion is that the policies that are in place that address COVID
It's called the COVID reopening plan.
Well, I'm trying to find motion to set all COVID-related policies to expire on 12/31/21. Okay, so that should say procedures.
Yes. Procedures, not policy.
Unless the procedure has its own sunset date and express desire to roll back COVID-related procedures. We can't dictate procedures.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying.
That's why we set it up that way. Policies are yours. Procedures are not. I mean, you can express desire to help guide procedures a certain direction, but that gets into the superintendent's day-to-day operational.
Then let me back up then, Jake. We took a vote to approve this plan per the state?
I don't know if you did or not.
We did.
I honestly,
But
did.
I'll be honest, I think at the time we said it really doesn't hold teeth. I mean, there's no teeth to it.
You may have, just as to express solidarity with
Just
the
that we were on the
superintendent's
same page.
position. I don't remember that. But either way, we constantly deal with the interaction between policies and procedures. Policies are the roadmap, and then procedures are the implementation of that roadmap. So if that's not what you want, certainly mark it up. But that was kind of what I was.
It puts us in a further area because we did vote to approve this, and what I would be asking is for this board to rescind that or terminate that at a certain date, which again, I understand. So this I think, as far as I'm concerned, highlights the issue we've got in the first place, that this is a very gray issue. I know in the discussions we've had, that's part of the problem here, is that we're getting into what is the responsibility of this board, what is the responsibility of the superintendent, and what can he further delegate to individual principals at a different level to have different responses at that level, per some discussions we've had. And again, that's the frustration that I'm trying to kind of move past. And although, I mean, I understand that this vote is in some ways symbolic, I think the superintendent understands the spirit here is that, and I think it's something we expressed again as we came back to school, that as quickly as possible this board wanted to move back towards removing anything we put into place that was related to COVID. And that's what I'm trying to express here, is that we as a board want to move back that direction with defined dates in mind, and anything we need to continue with, this board can talk with our superintendent about continuing. I understand we may not have authority to do that and force him to do that, but we have to take some kind of action here, or else, I mean, I think, again, this highlights that it's a very gray area that we are stepping into here.
Could it be correct to say that the motion would be to express the board's desire to have all policies expire on 12/31/21? Procedure's what I meant to say. I mean, that's kind of all we have to express the desire for him to do that. I mean, if that's what we have, that's what we have. If we have something else, I need to know.
Well, if your vote to approve the plan, and if you did vote to approve the plan, if your vote was to support the plan, then you're basically withdrawing that support by saying that you're now desiring to roll back all COVID-related procedures.
Well, basically, we're saying our support will end on 12/31. I mean, in all, if you want to stay congruent with the.
And again, the superintendent can take that as he chooses, because operationally that's his call to make. But you're expressing that desire to him.
Okay.
And yeah, that something along the lines of, in the motion there, if you want to tweak that, that's fine.
Okay, Ms. Parker.
I was just going to say, I think the main issue that we've heard about is parental engagement, and if we could potentially make a statement about that, and maybe reiterate that our policy trumps what is in the COVID plan as far as parents being allowed access to schools, I think this board's been asked to take a clear position on that, and I'm certainly comfortable taking a clear position on that. I have significant problems. When we went to the luncheon today and heard all the other private schools talk about their how much they value parental engagement, and we're sitting there as the public school saying you can't come in for a parent-teacher conference, you can't come into your kid's school except in this very limited environment. I think we were sitting there, I know David and I both were sitting there like, this doesn't look good. We constantly ask for parental engagement, and we're shutting the door on our parents right now, and I do have a problem with that, and I'm happy to have to reiterate that our policy does trump what this plan currently calls for as far as that procedure goes.
I'd have to disagree on that policy part, because if you look at 1.501, first paragraph, second sentence, it gives the authority of the principal to designate who he wants in his building and where they are allowed to go. So policy does give me the authority with the principals to do that.
then I think we get back to exactly where we were. It is to express the board's desire to have the current procedures terminate at 12/31 unless otherwise discussed with the board. I mean, because we can't approve it. Consulted with the board. I mean, here's what I want. I want to make a statement, like everybody else, that parents need to be back in the schools, and that we need to start getting some of this stuff off the books. Now, how we do that is where we're running into some problems because of the wording and the semantics. Am I correct in that assertion that the motion would be to express support for the rolling back of procedures as of 12/31/21, unless otherwise, or unless consulted? I don't know how you want to word that, but Mr. Howe.
So, I mean, we can suggest this and ask this all day long. You know, honestly, on December 31st, if this hasn't been met, we still have the ability to change policy. We can change that. We can strike that line out of that policy, and guess what? Now that power has been limited. So, I mean, we still have ways to have a checks and balances, so to speak. But not that I think we're going to get to that point, but I'm just saying we have the ability to determine who's in our schools and who's not in our schools. It doesn't just lie with the superintendent. So.
I'm just talking about the procedure of the COVID.
What was that document that we we had to turn in? What you got a title of it, David? Why can't our motion just say that as of December 31st, 2021, we no longer support our current reopening plan?
Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't want to try to complicate this anymore, but yeah, I'm not going to try to wordsmith that. Yeah, it would be your second.
I'll second that. I'll still hold the second. Okay, I'm good with the whole thing.
Now, what you could really do if you want to assert your power, you could. Now, listen. I'm going to give you positive feedback. You could, on December 30th, do away with all of them, and you would serve your power. But then we get what we wanted to.
Or just wait till January 1st.
Well, yeah. All right. Motion to set all COVID-related. Still, shouldn't it say procedures? No, we're just revoking support. Okay. Yes, okay. I think that wording is at least what everybody understands it to be.
And then just to add one more thing, that if there's a COVID-related policy that the staff is dead set that we got to keep in place, then bring it back to us on the 16th.
Yeah. Or during the December meeting, for that matter, because all these are in effect till the end of December.
I'm not saying put that in the motion, but that's just understood. That
yeah.
If it's
and then I
need
think he's done that. I think he's.
And y'all given me that direction.
Yeah.
So I know I've got to do it.
Yeah. All right. I think we have taken care of this as much as we can. I think we're ready to vote. I see no more lights. I'm going to make sure what I was voting for. All right. Moving on to other business. Is there any other business? That's it. I will say,
Sorry,
Ms. Parker.
can I ask a question on
Yeah.
something? On the K-12 Elevate, I just wanted to get an update on where we stand as far as hiring, when that's gonna start. I know we're doing, parent-teacher conferences and are, at least halfway through the second quarter and still not sure if we have teachers.
Go ahead.
I would hope then that someone will bring something back to us at the next meeting, because I don't think that we can continue to not have an Algebra 1 instructor for students in ninth grade and expect for our scores to continue to go up. So I hope that gets on the work session.
Okay, thank you. Work session for that one. Do remember that the retreat is the 13th. We meet on the 16th, and the joint Christmas party with the county commission is December 9th. TSBA conference is the week before Thanksgiving. Any other updates? My last update is at the top of the 5th, the Atlanta Braves 3, Houston Astros 0. Meeting adjourned.